right. If all is good, we should be live now. We're still a little bit in front of the real live stream, but yeah, I see it coming up. So, should be good. And without bloopers at the beginning where I say, shh, we're gonna go live now.
You say that now, but
yeah, we will see when we listen back to the to the actual recording on YouTube, and also when we end last time. So yeah, a little bit of bloopers. We left it in for the last episode. So welcome everyone. It's the last Thursday of the month again. So Daniel and I are here back with some news of what happened in the last month. So hey Daniel, how are you?
Pretty good, Newman.
I'm good.
Awesome. Let's get into this.
Yeah. So before we start, we have an exciting announcement to make. So for next month, and for once we already know the agenda 1 month before, which is like, that's an exclusive. Everybody's asking me the agenda, like on Sunday night, I get emails. Hey, what you gonna talk about on the TRL? I want to send to some people. So yeah, I have no idea yet. So actually, we only know the agenda like the day before. The day before Daniel and I come together, we put our heads together, put our news snippets together that we assembled for 1 month, and then we choose which content we're gonna do. But in this case, we will have somebody who's specialized in pen testing gaming. So we will have Mathieu Huisman, who's from Cyrex. He's the co-founder of Cyrex, and he's specialized in penetration and load testing of online multiplayer games. So he also has a video on YouTube, The Art of Online Hacking. You can go watch it. It's really interesting, and I found a lot of overlap with the things that we're talking about, but we are not that often into the ecosystem of online gaming and betting. While for him, that's his business. Day and night, he's into that pen testing. And with talking with him, there are some very interesting stories. And I think it will be a very exciting episode. So get that one down. It's the last Thursday of November. It will be November 25th. Probably we're going to start 1 hour later. Now, not because of the shifts of time, because this weekend... it's going to go to winter time in Europe. I don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the world. So depending where you are, it might be that we already go forward or backward 1 hour in our planning. But it's going to be 5 o'clock Paris time. So whatever time that you see, it will be 1 hour later of the time that was there. But I will share the link much earlier than I do traditionally, which means I'm going to share it probably tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So you can already put the reminder and have the exact time in your time zone.
Fun time zones. I don't think we changed until November 7th here in the United States. So.
Okay, for us, I believe it's this weekend. So, but I will see when I wake up. Finally, I'm going to be an early riser. 1 hour.
Great.
That's the good thing about our phones nowadays. When you wake up, you see, oh yeah, I'm on the right time. So there's no excuse anymore to showing up 1 hour late at work and saying, I didn't know that the time changed. Used to be a time where you had to change the clock manually, unless the people who had an atomic clock or something or radio clock that had the right time, but not an atomic one, a radio clock.
As an older side millennial, I'd say I remember as a younger kid having to deal with setting the clock before midnight, so you were having the right time in the morning when you woke up. Now it's the phones; you don't pay attention to it; it just happens on its own.
Yeah, it's only the microwave and the oven that I need to adapt still.
I've stopped changing those. I just troll people when they come over. It's like 6 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's 1 o'clock.
Can you imagine? I still have disconnected appliances in my home. There will be a time soon where everything is connected. So even your oven and your toaster, everything is connected. But for now, I still am able to buy some disconnected stuff. So which is good. I feel safer. At least nobody's toasting me remotely. So for today, we have a big agenda, a lot of content to go through. We're gonna start with ransom denial of service. There's quite a few updates that we have to bring. In the last episode, we already talked about an actor posing as REvil who is going after voice providers. But recently, actually last Friday, it started. There's a new actor that sends emails in the first person, and he calls himself the Cursed Patriarch, and sending out emails and targeting email providers and productivity software as a service companies. The Bitcoin is a little bit lower on the cursed Patriarch. It's more in line with what we used to see. It's like 0.06 to 0.11 Bitcoin. But on the REvil, we're talking 1 Bitcoin. And in the case of last month with VoIP MS, if you remember, that was quickly going up to 100 Bitcoin, which is insanely high for ransom. DOS at least, not for ransomware. So if they're really REvil, yeah, that's peanuts for ransomware, but not for DOS. We're also going to talk about booter customers that got a warning from the Dutch police. Then the Olympics, looking forward and back, so Tokyo and Beijing. What happened in Tokyo, what might happen in Beijing, or what are the important facts about Beijing that might lead to attacks. Then there were some takedowns in Ukraine, sorry, not Ukraine. In Ukraine.
You call it Ukraine, I call it the Ukraine. You can just easily get it all wrong across the board.
And then we will continue with the ransomware saga. It's becoming a soap with the real, in this case, the real REvil, if there's such thing as the real REvil, but the real REvil or REvil or whatever we call it.
REvil, yeah. so many different names.
Yeah, they go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. So it's like there's a pattern there. It's quite on off in their pattern. So they're offline again. And in that scenario, we're going to talk about the authorities hacking back. In that case, so then we're going to see there have been some reactions about that hacking back and those attacks and why REvil is offline. So Conti Groove and Darkside have their own opinions on that, and they were happy to share it. And then, yeah, Daniel, like I can say Mathieu Huisman very easily, but how? So Yen Lou Wayne Ransomware.
Yanlouwang. Yeah. Hard time pronouncing.
Yeah. Guess where those are located? I think they must be US, right? With a name like that.
I was going to say, I had a really hard time with Ragnar Locker when it first came out. That was a tongue twister for me.
Oh, those must have been Norwegian Vikings, for sure. Then so OWASP also had an update for their top 10 2021. It's already a bit out, but we recently, and actually it just went live for our Q3 DDoS and application threat report that we publish every quarter. And there were some interesting findings on the web applications where we can see that it very much aligns with the changes that OWASP did for the 2021 update. So that's good to see that it really fits the reality and that we have the statistics to match it up. And then we go into the world of vulnerabilities again. So Apache has had some struggles with vulnerability, then a fix that went wrong, and again had to be fixed. Luckily, it was very specific version, so not that many were affected, but still there was still the possibility to do remote command execution. And if that possibility is there, you can be sure that there's actors out there that's trying to exploit it and scan for it, especially when it's easy to do. Dahua also had some vulnerabilities. Now, the thing with Dahua, those vulnerabilities were severe, but we did not see a lot of scanning, and the biggest reason is probably because we don't have the honeypots matched up with that. So Dahua uses their own protocol. What was it called again? DHIP.
I think so, yeah.
And I think it's a proprietary protocol that they have. So there's not one honeypot that I know that supports DHIP. So that means that we cannot even see if the attacks are happening there. If they do it through HTTPS, which the first vulnerability can be exploited, then yeah, okay, we will see it. But the other one, we're not so sure. And also that led to, well, not exactly that. It was already from previous advisories that came out from the US government, but they got banned in some US shops, and you cannot buy them in the shop anymore. So they're off the shelves. Then yeah, they're becoming quite steady with the program. It's VMware, another vCenter vulnerability. And then we're gonna end, just to end with an intro for next month. online multiplayer gaming, GTA Online, and Twitch streamers that were very angry and that were suffering from DDoS attacks. But let's get into the ransom denial of service update, and I brought together all the ones that we've been tracking since last year. Of course, there's been ransom DOS way before that, and we talked a little bit about the history in the last episode. But here we start taking account from August 2020, because we believe that's when there was like a new shift and where ransomware became a persistent addition in the DDoS threat landscape, because we see them so often coming back. So in August 2020, we had the Fancy Bear Lazarus Armada Collective campaign, who was targeting the whole world and across all verticals, asking between 10 and 20 Bitcoin. And in December, we saw that the same actors, and we are fairly confident that those are the same actors, because a lot of customers that we knew received a letter in August or October even, so August, September, and October. They also got a new letter in December, so they were just going back again through their list of victims, to leveraging the research they already did to revisit them. And actually, it also showed in the letter, because the letter said, maybe you forgot about us, but we didn't forget about you. We were just busy working on more profitable projects, whatever those might have been at that time. But so they were back December, early January, same names, just revisiting previous targets that did not pay and ramping up the speed, because at that time the Bitcoin was surging. We were on record highs in terms of Bitcoin. So they also halved the price, but actually when you calculate it in dollars, it was almost double compared to the first extortion attempt. And then in May, we had what might have been another group coming forward with Fancy Lazarus. So it's already that people, or the attackers, try to pose as specific groups. They try to instill fear. So they're going to use popular names like an APT, like Fancy Bear, which is the Russian APT, Lazarus, which is North Korea. Doesn't mean that they are the real Fancy Bear or the real Lazarus, because it's typically not in their tactics to do those kinds of ransom attacks. However, in May, we saw one that wanted to be really clever and said, okay, if Fancy Bear and Lazarus is not scary enough, let me make a new one, Fancy Lazarus. So it's like a mix between Russian and North Korean APT groups. And that was the new name. And we saw them hunting especially for unprotected assets. Now, what is an unprotected asset? A protected asset would be one that's protected by a always-on DDoS protection or a CDN that sits there and protects that asset. And the way that they can find out is by just looking at the AS numbers, how packets are routed across the internet. And if they see that there's a scrubbing center or protection on that pad, they will not attack them. And we know that because we had we had customers with unprotected assets that needed onboarding. They were already a customer, but they had other assets that those letters were targeting. And then we had also a lot of new people that were asking for emergency onboarding to protect them. And then in August, we saw like a switch in tactic. Instead of posing as APT groups, now they started seeing, hey, those ransomware guys, they're making a lot of noise, and people are clearly scared about those guys. Why not use their names instead of APTs? So we saw the first letters popping up from an actor that was using Darkside. However, that was a hoax, we believe, because we didn't see any attacks following those letters, and it was also not that widespread. But then in September, last month, and we already covered that, we saw a group posing as REvil, targeting VoIP service providers. Letters were not delivered in the traditional way, at least not how we saw. But they leveraged techniques that their ransomware companions, or how should I call them, colleagues, also use, which is making it public. So you know that in ransomware, whenever there's a victim, the ransomware operators, they run their own blogs, their own PR sites, as we call them. And then everyone can go look at those dark web blogs if you have the link, and you can see who was the latest victim. And then they will also leak some sensitive information out there. The reason they do that is not to entertain us, of course. The reason that they do that is to put more pressure on the victim. It's one thing to defend yourself against an attack, but it's another thing to defend yourself against an attack when all your customers and the whole world is aware that you are under attack and that you're negotiating and that you're in problems. So that increases seriously the pressure on the people who were the victim of those attacks. And they did pretty much the same with VoIP MS here. So a alias REvil with a bunch of numbers behind them was on Twitter and was talking with and commenting on the messages from VoIP MS about their systems going down and about their problems that they had with DDoS. And they linked the ransom note in Pastebin. So that's the black image that you see on the bottom. That was a ransom note in Pastebin where they were asking for 1 Bitcoin. But VoIP MS didn't budge. So and after 2 days, the actor that goes as REvil or poses as REvil in this case, they decided, okay, that's enough playing. We're gonna up the ransom to 100 Bitcoin, which is insanely high, I would say. So, and these attacks are still ongoing. So that was in September. We already talked about it last month. But now, this week, actually, there was still attacks in the UK. So several voice over IP providers still got impacted by DDoS attack by those people. And most probably, again, the same group that poses as REvil. Whether it is the real REvil or not, leave it in the middle. Could be, but we suppose not, but it still can be, although they're offline again now. So when the first DDoS attack happened, the day after they came online again. So then it was like, oops. So first idea was, yeah, REvil is offline. So probably it's not them who did the DDoS attack, but then the day after they came back online for ransomware. Or maybe they're diversifying their offerings, you know, as we do as companies. You diversify your offerings to be stronger in the market when one goes bad. So maybe they think that if ransomware goes bad, we'll still have ransom DOS to extort people. Not a happy thought, actually, if that is the real reason that's behind it. And then, yeah, like I said last Friday, we had some new emails that were popping up, or since last Friday, and also throughout this week, we had some people coming with an email that came from a person that calls himself the Cursed Patriarch, and he was targeting specifically email and productivity providers. And I have the letter somewhere here. Yeah, I already talked about the VoIP providers, so I'm not going to go in detail here, but it was in the news again. So left side, this was September, and on the right side you have the VoIP providers that get attacked again, and that was from 27 October. So that was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday actually that the article came out. And the links, by the way, links to all the articles down below or on the site. I don't remember when you click. Wait, let me click. It's probably going to be on the site now, as YouTube changes their preferences. But the Cursed Patriarch, that's what I was talking about. So productivity and email software as a service providers that they're targeting, and the message is it's a little bit different. It's not the first time that we see that they link an article in the press. Previously it was the New Zealand Stock Exchange that was a popular asset. So the article, they would send an email and say, hey, remember what happened to NZX? You want to suffer the same fate or not? Well, this person is using the same tactic. So he said, I believe that you don't need this type of publicity. So, and he links an article from Katarin Simpanu at the Record that was talking about those DDoS attacks, and that article came out on Friday. So that letter is more recent than Friday, of course. And then at the end, it's nothing personal. I don't hate you. That's always like the charming message, you know. Don't take it personally. I don't hate you. I don't want to harm your business. It's just the way I make money. So yeah. So that's it. Don't take it personally if it comes at you. But be sure to be prepared and protected. Now, a good resource also, our friends from Zero BS. They have a logbook. The link is also down below, where they keep track of all the publicly known DDoS extortion campaigns that they found. We have more than those. We don't disclose our customers when that happens. So we want to make sure that customers are protected, and we keep that information sensitive. But if the customer themselves decide to publish that letter and share it with the community, happy to. But if our customers ask us to keep it confidential, we keep it confidential. But there is a list, runbox, posteo, fastmail, mailbox.org. Oh, and by the way, the email from the cursed Patriarch was sent from ProtonMail, so ProtonMail obviously is not on the list. It might be an issue if he starts DDoSing his own provider, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk about this, Daniel.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of an interesting situation that we've seen coming up over the last few months, as I like to call it, DDoS as a lure. And we've seen a few examples. Like I said, one of the first examples that we actually saw was a group called Angels of Cyber. And this was a malicious actor that was emailing actually multiple people, trying to tell them that, hey, we have evidence on the Fancy Bear Armada, Fancy Lazarus. What was the acronym that was for? FLB or something like that? Yeah. Anyways,
FBLA or something. Fancy Bear, Lazarus, and Armada Collective.
Yeah.
I
forget the acronym. Yeah, exactly.
FLAG. Well, it's close to FLAG, which is actually, it's kind of funny, the sound encoding and compression.
Exactly. So what was happening is this group was emailing security vendors and other people as well, asking them to download a file and basically pay them what they felt was fair for evidence related to RDoS campaigns. Now, of course, no one was dumb enough to click on all that stuff, and the group ended up going.
Are you sure?
Well, I mean, opening up as far as opening up and everything. But.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. No, it's all good. The point I was trying to get to, it was that they ended up going away. So they're just spamming. They're opportunists. They're trying to hope that someone would pay them for alleged evidence that was locked up in a zip file, I believe. But it was an interesting situation nonetheless. Is that here are extortionists basically going about. I wouldn't even say it's an extortionist. They were just asking for someone to make a random payment for evidence that wasn't exactly there. Now, in the email, they were ranting and raving about how these 3 people were associated with this group, and there really wasn't any hard evidence. There was a lot of open questions that the threat actor wasn't able to answer. It just kind of came down to an "F you, pay me" type of situation, which never really works out too well with the extortionist. But then a few weeks later, Malware Traffic Brad had posted this on Twitter that caught my attention, that there was a malicious document going around that was saying that it was a DDoS attack evidence. Now, while this wasn't attributed to AOC, it was interesting seeing another campaign that was using DDoS as a lure to try and get people to open up this file. And this file was saying that this was evidence of a DDoS attack against their network. Now, of course, once it opened up, it was a whole different thing. It was iSpot. So it definitely an interesting situation there when it comes down to using DDoS as a lure and seeing threat actors out there actually attempting to target actually the security industry in a way. Now with what Malware Traffic was talking about as far as ICE ID being dropped, that's a different situation. They're probably going to be targeting smaller businesses, not actual security firms. But still, nonetheless, like, you're sitting there on a Monday morning and you get this email saying there's a DDoS attack and here's the evidence. Some people are going to open it to look into it. Other people are going to be a little slower with it. But needless to say, we thought this was an important little segment of the news to call out and at least make our viewers aware that there is this campaign that's going around where they're trying to use DDoS as a lure and try to get people to open up these documents that claim to have evidence related to a DDoS attack.
Especially knock people, yeah. That would be more like spearfishing for knock people. Oh, bye, Daniel.
I'll be there, don't worry.
Yeah. So we have a black Daniel right now. So, warning for the DDoS boot. So the Dutch police, rather recently, sent out an email to 29 people And it was it was a Dutch police, so it was in Dutch, which is I can read it, but it comes down to the fact, and the English translation is on the bottom. However, Daniel is kind of obscuring it in the English version. Sorry about that. But again, the links are below. So they're saying that they registered, or that they found traces of those people paying for illegal DDoS services in a booter that they took down in July 2020, which was MineSearch. So those 29 people received a final warning. If it happens again, or if they see them again relating to any cybercrime, they will be prosecuted. So be warned. Even if you use it to attack your own IP, if there's even if there is a legal contract in place, it's hard to. These are illegal services. So there are pen testers out there who specialize in DDoS attacks. You use those pen testers. They know all. They have the infrastructure. They can do the attacks. They do not disrupt others, because don't forget, maybe your service might survive, but it might be that you do an attack and another service goes down by it, and then you're actually doing something illegal. So even if it is your own website, you might impact the cloud provider, or you might incur costs on some other people, and so it's never a good idea to use an illegal booter service, even if it is for your own testing. So those 29 people received a letter from the police explaining that. So be warned.
Yeah. One of the things I want to throw in about that is, in general, when you go on search engines, you're looking for booter and stressor services, you'll find dozens. I mean, they're all over the place. All these services say that they're removing them, but they're actually there. As we had mentioned earlier in the year, that there was a large amount of booters and stressors that came online during COVID. And one of the things I just want to say is that, those attack logs stay there for a long time. I mean, as researchers, when these services get hacked and their data gets leaked, we go and look at that. So if we're looking at law enforcement is looking at that as well. And while some of these actors might think they're smart because they're using Tor or using VPNs or anything like that, I think it's safe to say that in 2021, the government definitely has an upper hand in de-anonymizing a lot of that. And just as an overture and warning to anybody that's looking to use these is, prepare yourself to be visited by the police. These are not legal services sitting there for that long. It's possible that they could be run by law enforcement. A lot of people prior to this this month, let's just say, because we'll get into it a little bit later, had hard opinions about hacking back and the government not hacking back and taking the route of legislation and laws. But I think it's clear now that law enforcement around the world is stepping up their offensive game as far as capturing and identifying cyber criminals out there. So that was just
one important note to make: the dark web is not anonymous, even if you go on the dark web. So those are clear services. So you could use a VPN, you could use a dark web browser, but at some point when you leave the dark web, everything that's on the dark web in terms of connectivity is anonymized, because they're coming together in a secret rendezvous point, so you cannot get back to the other site or find out where they're located. However, when you use a browser that is giving away information from your system, well, the dark web will not stop that, and there's still a possibility to collect a lot of information if you're not careful with which browser you're using, or making sure that you have privacy set on your browser, and that there's no JavaScript loading that is trying to get information from you, and then
also the email address that you might use, and even though they don't verify, that's another point. And then then if they go and look and gain your records to your email service, did you have perfect OPSEC while accessing that email address, or was there one point in time that you accidentally leaked your origin IP? And then to a further extent, where else did you use that information for other accounts too? I mean, law enforcement isn't just looking at one little thing. They're looking at the wide spectrum. So, while you think that you were really slick and smooth with buying and renting a booter and stressor service, do you have the total OPSEC to avoid legal prosecution? And in this case, with most of these I'll probably say kids in the Netherlands, they got a nasty little letter to prove that, hey, we're watching you, and like, as I mentioned, the service gets hacked by even a non-law enforcement officer, a malicious actor. That information is out there too, and that's free information for law enforcement to get. So definitely a bad situation out there for those that are looking to DDoS. You probably shouldn't do it in general.
Yeah, so we did one I think last year, the DDoS Summer Olympics. I called it the Summer Olympics because we have the Olympics topic next. It's not that I want to make fun of it or anything. We
Well, I
still
mean,
think,
in a way, it's kind of fun.
yeah,
You know, like who's number one, who's number two, and who's number
yeah.
three. It's
I decided who was 1, 2, and 3. So yeah, they decided based on size. So we had remember we were talking about this last month, but there was a new entry that came after we closed the Threat Researchers live, and that was Microsoft. So we already talked about Yandex and Curator and what they believe was a botnet or is a botnet called Maris, consisting of MikroTik devices, which is not a surprise because MikroTik pops up all over the threat surface when it comes to DDoS. But they had a 21.8 million request per second HTTP attack. So it's not in volumes, it's in request per second, number of HTTP requests, and apparently they were using HTTP pipelining to make that happen. So that's pretty much the highest that we've seen in terms of requests per second. And that followed after Cloudflare in the summer already announced a 17.2 million requests per second. Both attacks came and were gone in 60 seconds. So if you remember, I called them gone in 60 seconds last month. Well, actually, Microsoft attacks fits the same pattern, so probably watched the same movie, the guys who attacked. But this case, it was a volumetric attack, so they counted it in terabit per second, so it clocked off at 2.4 terabit per second. It was not the absolute record because Google claims to have mitigated a 2.54 terabit per second attack in 2017. So I can give them the gold medal, unfortunately, but well, unfortunately, but it was an Azure customer, so it was in the cloud. It was an Azure customer that was in Europe. They used UDP reflections, and there were a couple of short bursts, but all about 60 seconds again.
And you know, interesting thing about that is, you know, a few years ago, everybody was talking about these long-term persistent attacks, and then just a few years later, we're looking at, you know, first, second, and third place for the world's largest attacks that were literally done in 60 seconds, which is kind of impressive to see the power that some of these people have now.
Yeah, but the low and the what we call the phantom attacks, that are those small attacks that sit on the bottom of the barrel, I would say, of your pipeline. These are still there. I was talking to one of our managed security providers this week, and he was saying that this is still a big problem. It's not that one peak that comes sometimes, we detect the peak, we clean it out, it's gone, but that's that constant understream of activity that is there, and that eats away at the packets per second mostly. So there's always activity. It's like it's never silent on the internet, and we already talked about that white noise that is created by scanners, IoT scanners that are out there, but also malicious scanners. So there's that like gray noise, and yeah, it's more gray noise, not white noise, it's gray noise that's out there from white and black hat scanners. So that's continuous activity that's going on the internet, and that takes away part of the bandwidth, so that we always have to invest and go higher. So you have the big attacks, but then and those happen as exception, but you have that continuous attack. And when it comes to applications, then you have those very long duration, low and slow attacks who are actually eating away at the resources. And when you have cloud services, those can be impacting because your service is getting slower because they are eating away a little bit. Like if they eat away 20% of your CPU, well, you're paying for that CPU. So that's 20% of the cost that you're throwing away. Same for memory and sessions and other things. So even if they don't immediately bring you 100% down, taking away like 50% of your resources can be an issue for the user experience of the others. So it's not only the big attacks that are that important. I'm not that much troubled about a big attack that comes in and goes away at 60 seconds. Yeah, okay, everything falls over and we come back up. But if you look at what happened on the VoIP providers, they have been hammered, not with 2 terabit per second, but around 100 or 200 gigabit per second, which is plenty enough to get them in trouble for weeks and to disrupt all phone connectivity. And even in the UK, some important numbers are routed through IP. So if you have the emergency services routed, there's no emergency service at that moment.
Well, that was an issue with the VoIP DDoS attacks with the RDoS campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
That some emergency services were disrupted because of those attacks, which is kind of a big problem. And you know, just kind of feed off of what you're saying about these big peaks, the one right above my head. My monitor's working. My monitor's working now, so I can see again. Horn, yeah. Anyways, as I say, these are like large hand cannon attacks. You know, it's very obvious. They're very loud. You can see it. You can mitigate it. But it to your point, the small, low and slow type of attacks that are just eating away at your CPU and everything like that. Those are the serious ones because they're very hard to detect. They're very hard to see. And as Pascal said, they will eat away at your resources and you won't notice it because you're not down. I mean, these are very noticeable. You get hit with it, you go down, everybody in the world's like, oh no, what happened? So yeah, it's interesting to see the two sides of DOS where, you know, in my opinion, I think these people are going for world record title and bragging records, where someone that's going with a little bit of the lower and slower attacks, they're actually going for damage. You know, they have an objective.
Yeah. Yeah, these don't seem to have a specific objective. They just pop up and then they go away for a month and then pop up somewhere else. So we're not sure what is the objective of this attack. Is it show of force? Nobody claimed the attacks, by the way, so it's not like somebody said, hey, did you see the biggest attack that I could do? No, so it's a bit strange that they just come there and
well, I mean, that's a good point.
Maybe there is an objective, but if there is, it wasn't shared by Yandex, neither Cloudflare, neither Microsoft. So if they know about an objective, well, they didn't share it, which makes it pretty much useless, except for giving us a top level number where we can make sure that our DDoS attack cloud is able to mitigate that top number. But for other people, that top number doesn't mean much. If you have a 1 gig line, you don't care if it's 2.4 terabit per second or 5 terabit per second. You're gone anyway.
Well, you know, another point you brought up is like no one claimed these attacks. Like in the past, when people launch world record attacks, they want to claim it. They want rights to it.
Absolutely.
They want bragging rights. But here, I mean, even with the darknet monitoring that we do at Radware, we have not found anybody that's mentioning or claiming to be behind this. In fact, Lockbit, the actors behind the Lockbit ransomware campaign, have been seen on dark web forums asking for the author of Maris to come forward so they can hire them. But nothing to be seen, nothing to be heard of. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, well, let's hope that it develops. Good. Olympics update.
That's me hoping that the Olympics happen.
You already denied one Olympics.
I'll be denied a few Olympics going forward here. You know, I love going to these sporting events. One, because I love sports, and two, because of the technology that's being integrated into these sporting events. Unfortunately, no one's going to the Beijing Winter Olympics this year or next year. The games begin February 4th. It's actually right around the corner. I think it's less than 100 days away now. The reason why it's so close to the Summer Olympics that happened in Tokyo is because, of course, the Tokyo Olympics were delayed by a year. But because of the ongoing pandemic, no foreign spectators will be allowed at the Chinese Olympics. Now, one of the interesting things is only those from mainland China will be allowed to attend the event. But of course, there's all kinds of rules and regulations about who can go to that event if they have the vaccine, all that stuff. Now, as far as the participants go, the participants must be vaccinated or they have to do a 21-day quarantine in China. So it's going to be a little interesting. You know, to a broader perspective, you know, a lot of people are wondering how the Olympics are going to go. You know, what kind of attacks they're going to see, what kind of threats they'll see. And in the next slide, it's something that I can highlight of what we might see, foreshadowing it. Recently, NTT Data put out a report about the Tokyo 2020 Olympics that were in 2021. But NTT is a provider of telecommunications and network services for the Olympics, and they have been for a very long time. They do a great job of it. But just to give you an example, is like contributing to the stable operations of the Olympics means managing 11,000 Wi-Fi access points, which is kind of crazy when you stop to think about all the different firmware and updates and patching that you have to do. But in the end, NTT saw 450 million security events, almost 500 million events. And while we never saw a disruption to the games, it's kind of crazy to think that that's how many security events that they saw in the time period. So when you think about what's going to happen in China, I think it's fair to say that, you know, across the board, they're probably going to see about 500 million events. The question is there actually any large scale DDoS attacks that will be launched to disrupt the stream of the games? You know, the big concern for Tokyo was because it was a digital games with no spectators as well. Their weak bottle point is going to be the streaming services, right? We all want to watch the games, but if you take that out, then we can't watch the games. And one other thing I wanted to throw in there from the NTT report is that it mentioned that the threat landscape had changed. You know, when they went in, they built the infrastructure, they built their security standards and everything for the Tokyo 2020 games, and it got postponed by the time it came around Tokyo 2021. You know, threat actors, the landscape, tools, and techniques had all shifted. So it put the NTT data in a really interesting position to reallocate resources and rebuild certain parts of the infrastructure to make sure it was secure to provide this stable game that we saw in Tokyo, which was a really cool thing. I personally really think it was interesting. I was looking forward to seeing some of the technology that came out at Tokyo. Unfortunately, we weren't able to see it. We won't be able to see it in Beijing, but you know, fingers crossed that we will eventually be able to go to Olympic Games in the future. You know, as an American, I look forward to the 2028 Summer Games in Los Angeles, and that's going to be a very cool thing, especially with all the stadiums that they're building over in Los Angeles. I mean, they have the SoFi Stadium, $5 billion stadium. It's the most state-of-the-art, most advanced stadium ever built, and you know, I just kind of wonder if we're going to see fans inside that. We're just now seeing fans for the football season, so there is some hope.
Well, yeah, when it comes to America, there is hope. So you're inside America, so you will be able to travel there. For me, it's still could be difficult. I still cannot enter America. I cannot believe it.
Yeah.
Although now it's going,
one.
yeah. So now they're gonna open probably November 8th. They're gonna open the border for Schengen people. But I have to say
Wait,
that
I think
now,
you should.
now it's not a good idea to
everybody.
open the border, because now it's exploding again in Europe. The whole map is going orange and red, and I see lots of infections. Not so many sick people, luckily for the vaccination, but because of the vaccinations. But still, there's lots of infections going around, and that's mostly in the schools now that I see it. So yeah, we will see where we will go at one point.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird to see how the COVID thing goes.
We can always stream, right? So that was already one. That is another thing that adds to it. You know, you have all that extra load that comes on those bandwidths and on those service providers. Service providers, they will have had to invest a lot between 2 years ago and now, because now the load, there's much more online. Now I think when Tokyo starts, or when Beijing starts streaming, that will also again raise that floor up. So the base level, with all the streaming that's going on, it will put some people on their toes. So means lots of opportunity to do a small DDoS attack just to tipple them over. You know, so it's.
Well, I mean, the country of Korea is having issues because of the Squid Game on Netflix. I mean, so many people are watching, the bandwidth increases. So I mean, it's like you said, there's more and more streaming, more and more people at home, and more traffic to have to deal with.
So those are the good DDoS attacks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to make a new category. You have the bad ones, they have the good ones.
Yeah, exactly. So,
down is down.
The takedown time. Yeah. I like talking about this kind of stuff, as a lot of our viewers know. I like to put a face or an end to some of these stories. So here in Ukraine, we have our first takedown that we're going to talk about. Is a takedown that occurred on September 28th, which is kind of important as we start getting into more information as we go around. But 2 were arrested in Ukraine. There were 7 properties searched in total. You know, just shy of $400,000 in cash, which was kind of fun to see. You know, always tons of cash in Ukraine, U.S. currency. It's kind of wonder where they got it from, but you know, all funds. 2 seized cars were 217 euros. So
those were not Lambos. In Russia, the malware guys drive Lambos, right? Lambos and Ferraris. That cannot be a cheap one.
We love Lambos over here, but you know, still nonetheless, 2 seized cars. They froze 1.3 million in cryptocurrencies, and now this is where things get a little interesting. So there was some attribution that was done by law enforcement. And so they said that these 2 people were a part of attacks that targeted over 100 companies and caused more than $150 million in damage. And they also had put out the little tidbit that they had been active since April 2020. I'm not going to attribute it because I'm not a ransomware expert as far as attribution goes, but many experts out there in the field suggested that these were members of REvil. a lot of the dots connect. As I said, I won't go so far to say that they are members of REvil, but it was a very interesting situation, and especially things that will come in the next few slides will add questions to that. But one of the interesting things I want to throw out as a little side note is that a recent report, the U.S. Treasury said that they had tied $5.2 billion in Bitcoin transactions or ransomware payment. So, when you're sitting there as a defender wondering if this threat is real, yeah, these people are very well funded. In fact, they're probably more funded than most security defenders out there. So it is something to be of concern.
That is more than the GDP of certain companies or certain countries, right? I think twice China's GDP was that it, or economy? I don't remember what it said in the report, but
it's pretty crazy. I mean, when you consider that some of these groups have $100 million sitting around, they can buy whatever exploit, they can pay whatever affiliate, they can pay off any insider they want. This is a real threat now. I wouldn't even say this is just a cyber threat. I think this is a global, threat as far as organized crime goes. Organized crime is a very interesting thing, and I've mentioned several times on our videos that street crime, physical crime is going away, and those criminals are not going to throw away money. They're going to go find a new outlet to generate money, and this is kind of a scary situation, seeing how much money a ransomware group can make. So to get in, or actually no, I guess the next slide is going to be the second takedown, or is it? Yeah. But before we'll talk about both takedowns before we get into the ransomware drama. So this was the second takedown that happened. This was like a week after. So this is like the first week of October. The Ukrainian law enforcement arrested suspects that were running a botnet. And this was interesting. The botnet was over 100,000 devices. That's a very large botnet. Now, while some of the details were missing, what we do know from the report is that this botnet was leveraged to launch DDoS attacks, send spam, and also to scan and exploit additional devices. So without attribution, it just definitely lays into the land of Mirai, right? So Mirai used to be just
was it
force,
Maris?
It has several.
Maybe it was Maris.
People say that, but at the same time, I don't know if Maris was actually.
But when did they take them down? Because that must have been a couple. Can it align?
This one specifically, I believe this was the first week of October. I can pull it up for real quick.
It's still possible that they did the last hooray on the index before they were taken down. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's still allegedly,
allegedly. The whole Maris thing is very interesting. So, the Ukrainian police posted this on September 30th. So the last day of September. So yeah, I mean, back-to-back takedowns, kind of interesting. One of the things that the law enforcement talked about is that the group was advertising on closed forums, so like exploit and XSS damage lab, all that fun stuff. They also advertise on Telegram, which is very normal for a lot of these threat actors. They for some reason trust Telegram and they advertise their services there. Don't ask me why. and they also took payment via web money, which is I guess it's blocked in Ukraine. There's some kind of sanction about using it, but this is what they're using in Ukraine. So interesting subject nonetheless. That here the Ukrainian law enforcement actually kicking down doors and arresting people. So you had 2 people arrested that were associated with ransomware. You have someone that was arrested with 100,000 botnet. So I think it's fair to say that countries are kicking back, I think is the right word to say at the moment. It's kind of fun to see that. But to this next slide, REvil went offline again. I think a lot of y'all are familiar with this, but I'll just kind of recap it. REvil first went offline on July 13th after they did the Kaskia attack. This was the 4th of July attack. This made tons of news and tons of information. The US government got very, very involved in ransomware after this event. There was, I believe, a summit with Putin and everything. But there was a threat actor that was part of the REvil group known as Unknown. This person was the person responsible for adminning, for PR, for speaking publicly for the group. And this person was alleged to have taken down the servers and disappeared with all the money for REvil. And this is why the REvil account started getting banned on all the underground and closed forums, was because they were not able to pay their affiliates after the services were taken down, which caused a lot of issues in the underground. A lot of these criminals are building trust models with each other, and there's a lot of give and take out there. When someone exits scams or runs off with the money, it kind of destroys the reputation for good. And that was a little bit of an issue they had when they returned in September, is that as soon as those servers came back online, and as soon as they start using the same infrastructure, and a lot of people start coming up to this new admin, Ende, Ende, I guess we'll call him.
One day, yeah.
Yeah, one day. Anyways, everybody started going to this new admin asking, where's my money from the past? And it caused a lot of issues. It was hard for them to get affiliates. They started offering a 90% take to their affiliates if they came back to REvil, which is pretty impressive, but they still had tons of issues. And but like I said, they were officially online. They had rebooted their original infrastructure, meaning the original Tor, onion URLs, the original infrastructure across the board. But then they went offline again on October 17th. And this was kind of a strange situation because Ende had mentioned that they were targeting him, that they were coming for him, and signed off from the forum saying goodbye. What had ended up happening is that I think it was like a week later, Ritters reported that U.S. law enforcement had disclosed that they were actually behind the takedown. And what had ended up happening, per reports, U.S. law enforcement was staging to take REvil down, but REvil had gone offline before the actual operation had begun. When REvil came back and re-popped up their old infrastructure, the back door that law enforcement had left in their code was still there, which is really interesting because that's REvil's way of targeting their victims, is compromising backups, and they themselves had their backup compromised. But this kicked off a series of events that happened because a huge conversation has always been around hacking back. And people have been very, very upset about this whole hacking back thing. But after the United States had disclosed that they went after REvil with all the bald eagles in the world, you had a little situation where the Netherlands came out and they said that they were going to use their intelligence and military services to counter cyber attacks. Now, while Netherlands is not really seeing these massive attacks, they want to kind of preemptively warn criminals, hey, if you come mess with us, we do reserve the right to use our military services to come take you out of wherever you are. And this is kind of interesting because what we were talking about earlier, as far as the Dutch police sending emails to RDoS campaign users, or not RDoS, DDoS users, sorry. The Netherlands and the Dutch government is very, very aggressive when it comes down to cyber criminals, which is a great thing. But this kind of, as I said, this kicked off a series of events where the Dutch government says, hey, we'll use a military service. And then the United Kingdom comes out and says that they want to use their new national cyber force to literally hunt down and hack ransomware operators, and that they're proactively looking to use offensive operations to deter these operators, which is the same thing that you see the United States doing at the moment, is that now we are beginning to use offensive operations to deter future aggression. And like I said, to the conversation that we are all having in the InfoSec community about a year ago, is hacking back the right answer? I don't know if it's the right answer, but I can tell you legislation and all these task force aren't solving anything. I mean, it's great. We're doing something, we're having conversation, but we need to actually physically do something about this problem. Words aren't going to solve this problem. So I think this is a very interesting situation now that we're walking into. You know, is hacking back gaining traction? I think the answer is absolutely yes. And I think this is something that we as an industry are going to have to deal with, because, you know, you can't punch someone without expecting them to be punched back. And when two people are throwing punches at each other, you have an official fight. And I think that we're actually moving into a realm where we're about to start an official fight with cyber criminals. And what we thought was bad was just the beginning. And you know, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but things are going to get worse before they get better with ransomware. And we're going to have to actually become aggressive with dealing with the situation. Now, like I said, these events kicked off a series of actions. And one of the first things that happened was the ransomware group Conti posted a statement about the REvil takedown. They commented on the US government. And this was kind of interesting because, you know, a lot of people, I think it's Catlin and some other people, were saying that these were literally drug fuel rants. And you read through these rants that these ransomware groups put up, and it reminds you that these aren't professionals. You know, these are emotionally compromised hackers that are not exactly the professionals that we once thought they were. They are very, very emotional. You know, they use colorful words calling the United States bandit mugging behavior of the United States. Bandit mugging behavior. That's a pot calling the kettle black, right? Like how is a ransomware group saying that we have bandit mugging behaviors? Now I can understand, like, on a fair plane, that some people might have gripes with the United States government, but it's kind of strange that this person that is extorting U.S. companies, extorting companies all over the world, is calling us bandits. You know, it's a very strange situation. But they even go into the rant of questioning if the U.S. has laws to prevent the government from hacking back. To me, my brain busted at that point, because I'm sitting there like, wait. We have laws that prevent people from hacking, and the people committing these crimes are asking if we have laws to prevent them from being arrested wow. You know, that just really blew my mind. But this post that was actually archived by VX Underground. The issue with a lot of these groups is that they post up their manifestos and blogs onto the ransomware PR sites. They take them down pretty quickly. I forget who posted this meme or where it came from, but I thought it was really funny, because, you know, you can definitely tell this was what they felt when they posted. This is really what it was like when they posted it. They weren't the only ones either. Like, you think that Conti would be the only one? Nope. Groove wanted to jump into the matter too. Now, Groove is not really I wouldn't even say an expert. They're kind of like the low level. What Groove was Baduk before, so not the best ransomware group. But they also had a comment the same day about the U.S. government's action against REvil, and they actually called for extortion gangs to target the U.S. public sector, which was really kind of funny to see. Like, okay, now we have two ransomware groups losing their mind on a Friday, talking about, hey, everybody attacked the United States. And even funnier is, deeper into this conversation that Groove had posted, they suggested not attacking China going forward, because they might have to use China as a safety net if Russia takes a stance against them. So, I mean, that's kind of funny that this person here is thinking like, hey, you know, don't attack Russia, or don't attack China, because if they come for us, we need to move to China. Delusional at best, but you know, I would like to see them try and do that. You know, I'd like to see them try and move and get. I mean, look at Snowden when he was trying to move across the country or across the world. He got stuck in airports. So, like, why do these ransomware authors think that they're not going to get stuck in airports and that someone's going to protect them? Anyways, Groove continued losing their mind, and then they put out a $30,000 bounty on the Record.media. This is a Recorded Futures media outlet. Now, of course, they quickly took it down, but I found this extremely funny, because ransomware groups and criminal actors in general have been slowly targeting the Record.media. Earlier in the year, they were targeted as a DDoS attack. Now they have a bounty on their head, which is kind of interesting. I personally love the Record. They put out amazing content, very verified information. But, you know, they're usually the first, and they've seemed to have pissed off a couple of ransomware groups out there enough to put that up.
They used to be helping them. They were happy when somebody in the media was talking about them. They leveraged that, and now they're turning against them. So.
Well, I think it's the same thing that we can say about when we used to cover Anonymous and Hacktivists, is that they absolutely loved it when we wrote those reports, but they hated it as we kept digging into them and kept finding out exactly where their infrastructure is and what tools they're using, what malware they have. So, you know, I found that really interesting. But you think that, anyways, Groove was not the only one. There's also BlackMatter and what was Darkside. So BlackMatter. Well, Darkside disappeared after their whole U.S. hacking campaign. They became what's known as BlackMatter. There's a great blog. I didn't put it in here. I'll throw it up in resources or something, but it shows the renaming of all the ransomware campaigns. There's like 7 different groups that have constantly renamed themselves. But Darkside was a former group. They're now called BlackMatter. They reacted to the REvil news in a different way. They actually didn't post up any comments. But per Omari, the group moved 107 Bitcoin, so $6.8 million. They basically broke it up between 6 to 7 Bitcoins in multiple wallets. But the transfer took place 6 hours after the news that the U.S. government had targeted REvil. So clearly, back to the original point, is hacking back gaining traction? Yes. It absolutely is, because you can see that the reaction, the United States targets REvil and literally had 3 other groups react within hours of that action and that disclosure. So I do think this is a good case study showing that hacking back might have some kind of an impact over legislation and task force, that, you know, reaching out and touching these people and letting them know that you're not you're not invincible is a great way of moving the can forward for defenders, at least. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought it was interesting enough to bring up in all the drama. But then the last thing I wanted to cover with ransomware is the Yen Lou Wayne Ransomware variant.
Before you go there, on this slide it says that the 107 Bitcoin from Colonial Pipeline ransomware has moved to new wallet. Wasn't that seized? Weren't those Bitcoins seized?
Not all the Bitcoins were seized. It was just the affiliate payout was seized. That's why everybody was upset, is that there was no money to get to them. But I don't know I don't track Bitcoin. Omari would probably be able to speak more in depth about this. But yes, the wallet that those coins went to saw a transfer. So connecting the dots however you want.
Yeah, sorry, I was just curious.
No, it's all good. It's all good. People might have questions, so you got to answer. But yeah, so this new, you just wanted to hear me say it again. Yeah, Lou Wang. I've been practicing saying that all day, so I can mess up. Sitting in the mirror every day. So anyways, semantic threat hunters discovered this new ransomware variant, which was kind of interesting. Not that the variant was like different or anything, it was more or less the tactics that go along with it. Inside the note, we all love the notes that all these, Dutch police send criminals notes, criminals send us notes. We love exchanging Valentine notes here back and forth.
Let me make it a little bit bigger so that people can
the text is really hard to see. So anyways, the note warns the victims not to contact law enforcement and ransomware firms. Which is kind of standard nowadays. A lot of these threat actors don't want negotiators. Like they absolutely do not want negotiators around anymore, which was funny because at one point in time they loved negotiators because negotiators were like, hey, just pay. But now there's a whole different situation with that. Anyways, the group goes on to say, if the rules are broken, the operators will continue to DDoS attack or conduct a DDoS attack. And this is why I want to bring it up, is because for a long time, ransomware and RDoS were separate entities. Sometimes a lot of people confuse the two words, but it's strange seeing RDoS and ransomware come together here as far as providing DDoS attack vectors during a ransomware engagement. So threats, they also go on to threaten to call employees and businesses, which is something that we kind of saw with the REvil RDoS campaign from the Twitter account. Now that while the Twitter accounts are very rare, that Twitter account was actually contacting business partners and users of those platforms to let them know they were the ones behind that attack. Here's the letter that we had sent them. Maybe you should tell that client or victim to pay us. Which is very interesting to see these extortion groups going down the line now because they can't get a response from executives. So they launch a DDoS attack and it's still ignored. So what do then? They DDoS potential business partners, they call people, they make a bigger scene, which is very dramatic in a way. But at the same time, they're looking for the greatest impact. But then they also go in to threaten to repeat the attack. They threaten to come back to the victim. And they also threaten to delete all that victim's data again, which is something that we see with RDoS campaigns as far as them circling back early in the year. So I'm starting to see that both of the groups are feeding off each other's techniques. They're learning from others and they're incorporating what works into their platform. At first we called it triple extortion. Now I think we're quadra or whatever.
Quintuple.
We keep moving down the line. Yeah. They keep adding so much that it's just it's a disaster. So yeah, that's the ransomware drama that I want to bring up.
With their affiliates, they pretty much have all the skills in the world that they need, and they have enough money to pay them, and there's enough candidates jumping to get that money or a piece of that money. So,
well, that's why I mentioned the Lockbit author going through the forums looking for the mayor's botnet owner. It's clear that ransomware extortionists want DDoS as part of their campaign. And the scary thing is that they have tons of money. So like if the mayor's person exists, what's $1 million for the ransomware campaign to have them on the payroll,
Well, the latest rounds especially this year of ransom DOS campaigns have been not successful in terms of paying, but they have disrupted people. Before we knew about ransom DOS going on, but there was not really a lot of disruption, or that we could say that, oh, half of those providers were out or down because of those targeting. But now it happens more often.
Yeah.
We see impact from it, and I think that they also see that. So whatever works, they're happy to add them to their arsenal of weapons and pressure points.
Yeah, why not? That's part of evolution, but that's part of the issue.
Innovation.
For defenders.
That's innovation in the underground, but still innovation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, moving on to something completely different. This is application security, and a small commercial plug. We just have our quarterly DDoS and application attack report that came out. The link is down below. It was just out today, just published it. But one of the interesting findings, and that was something that I find myself like, oh wow, this is really aligning well. So I was astonished when I saw this graph, and also then the OWASP top 10. But as you might know, OWASP has an updated 2021. So here you can see on the slide the 2017 on one side. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger again because we're starting to put too much information on our slides again. So the 2017 versus 2021, and you see that the A1, which used to be injection in the 2017, so injection was a top security concern for web applications in 2017, and that includes SQL injection or code injection or any kind of injection for that matter. So that was a top concern, and that went down to the third concern. And the A5, which is the broken access control, actually went up to the A1. So means that in 2021, broken access control is now taking the first place. And in between injection and broken access control, you have cryptographic failures, which comes from the internet going much more leveraging SSL and encryption for privacy. So of course, in the last 4 years, there has been more extensive use of that. So it makes sense that cryptographic failures go up, and also attacks on cryptographics happen more often. But when I look at the data from our cloud, from our web application firewalling and application protection cloud, I see that, and that's in the top chart, that's the pie chart that is up there on the right. You can see that the biggest chunk, and I'm still using the 2017 labels, so our events are still labeled with 2017. The person who makes the signatures will be happy to hear that I want them updated for 2021. You will have to go through thousands and thousands of signatures to put in the new categories for 2021. So that will be a big task, I'm afraid. But in the 2017, you see that A5 broken access control takes like almost 50% of the attacks that we saw in Q3. So yeah, kudos to OWASP and to the whole community behind OWASP, because they are right, and this is the #1 threat by far. And then injection is the second threat. Cryptographic, yeah, we don't see on the application layer because that's more of a network. We would see that in the DDoS attack. So that report also includes DDoS attacks, so the network layer. So you will not see that in the web application firewall as an event, but you would more see that on the DDoS level, where there might be an attack on the cryptographic or an attempt to send packets to cryptographic service, but packets that are broken and that are trying to deny the service of that cryptographic. So, but it was something interesting. It really caught my eye, because I made the chart, and then after there was somebody who wrote an article on that new top 10 and how it moved, and I saw like broken access control is top of the list, and then this was like, oh wow, that really aligns well with what we are seeing in the real world. So this aligns like 100%. So for once, theory and data come back to back very well.
Oh yeah.
Now, staying in the application and moving more to vulnerabilities, but also in web servers, Apache had a couple of hiccups. It's
a couple?
Yeah, well, actually a couple, yeah, two to be exact. There were 2 official CVEs at least. So the first one that was disclosed was a path traversal and file disclosure vulnerability. So they changed the way they looked at normalization and they looked at path traversal, and the path traversal happened before the decoding of characters, which meant that if you had encoded characters like you see on the top here in this get statement, the %2e is just a dot. If you decode the %2e, if you normalize it, that's just a dot character. However, that's a typical evasion that many of them use. They use base64 encoded, or they use encoded characters like this in the ASCII table with the percentage sign in URLs. And that's how you can typically evade like detection of path traversal or other detection methods. So in this case, it was broken in an update towards the 2.4.94 version of Apache. So that one was vulnerable, and that allowed anyone to get access to certain files that they shouldn't get access to. So if you do the path traversal, you see etc host, etc password, and we saw. But then they tried to fix the vulnerability, but they didn't fix it completely. And then some researchers also found out that the vulnerability could be used for remote code execution whenever the loadable module, the plugin module mod CGI is enabled. Now, I don't know how many still have CGI enabled. CGI is a protocol that we used to use like when I was starting with web services, which is, yeah, I'm already getting old. That's like 25 years of experience, we call that, but could also call it old. But like 20 years ago, CGI was that thing, you know, in a web server, whenever you had a web request coming in, there was no process running. Actually, the web server would start a Python script or start a bash script or a PHP script or whatever and pass the arguments on the environment, and then the script spits his output to standard out, and that's the web page that gets presented to you. That was basically what CGI was. But to make that faster, they invented mod CGI to run that script and keep that script in memory and run it from there, because it's faster in terms of requests and replies and less resources on the server. But yeah, so if you have mod CGI enabled, that also means that you could run some other things like bash and shell. So you could start a reverse shell just by running a command here. So they found out it was not sufficient, and yeah, when we look at the examples here, so here you have an example from Hacker Fantastic that shows how you could, by doing a simple post of some command, you could create a file and get an output back. So that shows that it's remote command execution. So it's not only a path traversal and file disclosure, but also remote command execution. Now, it was specifically in 249 and 2449 and 50. It was fixed in 2451. So after two CVEs, it was fixed completely. But we still see the scanning going on. So you see that we had several hits in our honeypots for people trying to find out. And the first scans typically are higher because that's the bad guys trying to find out. And then you get like a lower continuous, have that very long tail always in scans. Whenever there's a new vulnerability, it goes up very fast and then it goes down, and then you have a long tail. Actually, the long tails are white hats. So that is security companies scanning around and trying to find out how many services are actually impacted. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to put the cams back. Now we're back visible. Oh, Daniel, you could have told me. Yeah.
People don't want to see this ugly mug.
We're so charming. It looks so nice.
Yeah.
So that was Apache, and then there was the Dahua Bans, and I already said it in the introduction. There was two vulnerabilities in their proprietary protocol, which is called DHIP. I believe it's proprietary. I don't think I found a reference to medical protocol that was called DHIP, but I don't think it's a medical protocol. I think it's something Dahua IP protocol, and also in HTTPS for the first one. So basically it was if you send a certain command on that specific proprietary protocol, you could put in fields like, say, okay, I'm going to use a NAT keyboard, and then it was not asking you for a password, to just give you access. And in the case that you said that your IP address was the loopback IP, so like you're opening the browser straight from the platform and you said the login type is loopback, then you could could also get local access and full admin access. So you could say that you were an administrator and get full admin access to those cameras. As I said, because it's a proprietary protocol, we don't see any scans. I cannot pick up any scans because the honeypots don't support it yet, or will never. It's one of those things. If you have proprietary protocols, there's already a POC out there, so the hackers have access to it. The attackers better, so there's a POC, so you can use the POC and scan for it. But we don't have the means to actually track if somebody's scanning it already. And that camera looks kind of funny, doesn't it? It's like 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth.
Yeah, it's like a little robot that's pointing a finger at you, like, do not cross the
crosswalk. Which brings me to the next slide, and to actually, I'm gonna make it larger again. The bottom text is actually interesting because the US said that those entities have been impacted in human rights violations and abuses in the implementation of China's campaign of repression, and I think that those cameras were actually used for some things that were not 100%. I think that's what they're alluding to. I'm not sure, but so yeah, the camera looks a little bit like scary, but there's a reason for it. It is scary. And
but the interesting thing is they just pulled it from the shelves everywhere here.
Yeah. So but that was not the first thing. So first of all, there was that it was deemed a threat to U.S. national security. Because of vulnerabilities that were in Dahua, and not only Dahua, it was also Hikvision. But then also they got sanctioned for human rights abuse. So that's what made Best Buy, Home Depot, and Lowe's, I don't know what Lowe's is, but drop the Dahua cams from their shelves. So you cannot buy them anymore in the US because
Dang
of that.
it.
Yeah, too late, Daniel. Wait, the one that I have, it's it's Ricam. It's not Dahua Tech. It's another one. I still have a couple, but not Dahua. But Dahua was always involved in large-scale IoT issues. So vulnerabilities in their DVR recorders and also in their cameras have been trickled around the whole threat landscape and IoT abuse by botnets, so it's not really a surprise. Hikvision as well, and any IP camera vendor for that matter. And the problem is they fixed it. So yeah, they have fixes for the previous unauthenticated access. Wow, it's a series with lots of difficult words today. So they have fixed it, but yeah, the problem is people who have those cameras at home, when do you update it? And I might imagine if they use it in the China Olympics, 11,000 cameras to update, that must be a big job to get them all updated. Yeah. Were they Dahua cams? I didn't see what kind of camera it was, but Dahua is Chinese, or? I believe so. Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, it must be if they get banned by the US. Mm-hmm. I'm a European, I can say that.
Lucky.
Yeah. VMware, yeah. So yeah, as I said, unfortunately they're back. There was another remote command execution vulnerability in vCenter. So a lot of vCenter is popping up in the last 3 months, or the last 3 episodes. Every time we have VMware vCenter that's coming out. This one was discovered by Rondori attack team and publicly disclosed in September. It's a remote command execution again, so you have that one URL and you see the URL in white there in the middle. You just post to this specific URL and you give a parameter the instruction of putting a file. So the only thing that you can do is a file upload, but if you can upload the file in etc cron D and you format that file correctly, not like some botnet guys try to execute and make persistence by putting in wrong commands, but in this case it's the right command. So you put in like the *****, which means executed every minute, I believe, in the cron, because cron is the scheduler of Linux systems, and whatever file you put there with a format that contains those stars and then the command, it will execute, like try to execute that every minute, I believe, if it's star. You can also schedule it to make it execute at 6 o'clock, for example. When you come back from work, you just log in, you just put up your reverse shell server, and then whenever somebody was infected, it will connect into your reverse shell, and you have full shell access to that VM, to that vCenter server. unfortunately. So the scan, so you can see here, it was disclosed in 21st of September. And as always, scans do not start when a vulnerability is disclosed. If the vulnerability is easy to execute and all the information is there, yeah, they will start 1 hour later. But typically they will start whenever there's a POC that is being disclosed, or somebody shows how to do the hack, or somebody puts enough information out there that makes it easy to copy paste, like what I did. So actually there was plenty of blogs out there, so I just copy pasted, and then yeah, it was easy to make it work. And yeah, so there was also this article that yeah, it's not really made me laugh, but it should make us sad. But the subtitle, especially VMware CISO and many experts have been begging people to address the CVE issue. So update your servers as soon as possible. It's not the first time that VMware says, hey, we know that this is being exploited. Make sure that you update it. Or don't publish it on the internet. So if your server is not available on the internet, if you cannot access vCenter from the internet, unless you have a very good reason to do that. But if there's no good reason, just don't do it. There's no reason to put out servers on the internet. And don't do it on an IP address that is not cataloged, that you think that, oh, I'm gonna hide it in the deep web, you know, the web that's not indexed and where there's no DNS host names, just an IP, use my IP as a password. Well, yeah, it is 12 characters, I would say, and it's all numbers. So it might sound like a strong password, but there are IoT crawlers out there, IoT search engines that are scanning the whole IPv4 range. So unless you do it in IPv6, in IPv4, there's no hiding. So don't put that service out there just with the IP address and say, hey, I'm going to share the IP address with my friends and they can access that server and we're good. No, you're not good. Your server will be listed in one of the Showdown Zoom-Eyes or censuses of this world, and easy to find.
Last slide, Pascal tries to get photoshopped again.
Yeah, oh yeah, I almost forgot about that one. Yeah, those were also guys doing DDoS on GTA Online. Yeah,
yeah.
I need to bring that one back for the next episode. The one where they photoshopped me on top of a big Rambo. Like,
Yeah.
We know who you are.
Yeah, I thought that was really funny, man.
Yeah. Yeah, to give you the backstory, that was Gen X. So there was a botnet that we discovered that was called Gen X. It was like 2 or 3 years ago, and the people behind that were using it to attack GTA Online users. Actually, they were running their own servers, and their service was servers for GTA Online customized services, and their customers could actually rent the services of that platform to DDoS other servers that are out there. And by doing so, they can attract more people to their servers, and they can ask more money for their customized GTA Online servers. So that was the whole business setup that was around it, and the guys who were behind it, yeah, they saw the article, and we took down their botnet, so they were not happy. So they posted up an image of me with my face on top of.
They're never happy when you take their botnet down.
No, they're not good sports. It's just a game. Come on, it's in the game.
Yeah.
That's EA. Yeah, that's EA.
Yeah.
EA is in the game.
Yeah.
But it's a good transition to next month's special. So that was now specifically Twitch streamers that were targeted, and yeah, it's not really funny, but kinda, I guess. There was a TikTok user that was streaming videos, and he went by the name of Kill the Streamer on TikTok. It's that account is gone now, I believe, or he's at least not active anymore. And he was uploading videos where they were DDoSing famous Twitch streamers that were playing GTA Online. Now, the problem with GTA Online is that it relies on peer-to-peer connections. So it reveals the IP. So whenever you are in a game, it reveals the IPs of the other parties that are on that network. And they were able to find out some IPs of some big GTA Online streamers. Now you have to know that GTA Online, even though that the game is 15 years old. I don't remember how young I was when I played it, but it's still famous.
GTA 5 or the whole entire?
Well, GTA 5 for me, GTA 5 and they had the San Andreas. Yeah, oh man, but these are also still online. But GTA Online is GTA 5, I believe. I'm actually pretty sure because I installed it last week for my son. He was asking, "Hey, I want to have GTA." I said, "Really? You're 8 years old? That's not." Yeah, but I want it. Okay, you want to be scammed? You go ahead, do it. So now I'm cranking up my honeypots because I'm gonna attract lots of DDoSers that are after GTA gamers, right?
As we're all learning, the younger kids ask for GTA earlier and earlier.
Yeah, but for me it was like, what, you want to have GTA? But I played that game when I was young. Not your age, of course, but I mean younger than now. Which was kind of funny. It's like, well, your father played that game, yeah? Huh? When?
Pascal might be dealing with a little hacker in his family. He might have done his research and knew that Pascal had these games.
I saw your head plastered on one of those images from GTA, by the way.
Hey, Dad, you're internet famous. You're on GTA?
So it started with the Dark Viper AU, which is one of the big Twitch streamers. And what I want to say is GTA Online is still averaging at about 300,000 players per day, so that's still amazing if you know how long that game has been around. And actually they're gonna have a version for PS5 now as well, I believe. So they're gonna have an updated version for PS5, and then there will be GTA 6. I'm actually looking forward to that one. Just for the nostalgia. We will do some online YouTube streaming while we're playing GTA 5.
Yeah, exactly. We should do that. We should do that on the next one. We'll stream GTA 5. We'll take our questions and comments to the video game.
Yeah, we will rent a server. I know a party that can give us cheap servers. So the guy tweeted, "Hey, for real, kinda wish Rockstar didn't give everyone my IP address every time I played online. Getting DDoS is not..." Well, it doesn't say it like that, but getting DDoS is not fun. So it was actually those guys killed the streamer, and they found that it was nice to troll or fun to troll and stream that on TikTok while taking down some famous streamers, which also impacts their business because, hey, by the way, that's their livelihood. Some of those streamers just survive because of those platforms. That's their only job that they have. It's day and night streaming. So when they get DDoSed, it's no fun for them either. For us, it's also no fun if you want to relax and well, GTA is not really what I would call relaxing, but if you want to get some steam out of your body and yell some obscene words to other people, I think it's a really good platform for that. For de-stressing.
What's not relaxing about stealing a car and racing around a city? That's I think in real life they call them street shutdowns, but no, I don't know.
The purge.
Yeah, exactly.
So which brings me to, if you want to know more about those stories, hear more of those stories, and you think it's fascinating, all that gaming, and it's not only multiplayer online gaming. One of the stories that Mathieu was telling me, that they were hired by a company that does gaming embedding, and they did a pen test in a blackjack game that they had, and they found like 27 different ways to cheat. One of them is like seeing the cards of the other party. I don't think that's a good thing. So it's not only multiplayer online, but there's also money involved in many of those games. And as we know, with the pandemic, more and more people went from physical casinos or physical gambling to online gambling. So it's becoming a big market, and I'm sure that it will be important going forward. So Cyrix for sure is in the right business, and they are specialized. They're laser focused on gaming penetration and load testing. But Mathieu will be here to talk all about that and the art of online game hacking. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Good. Until then, well, Daniel, it was a long one again. 1 hour and a half. Yeah, but interesting, I hope. Yeah, I hope it was interesting for everyone. Thank you very much for joining us so long, and we will see you back next month, November 25th. Bye-bye.
Thank you.